Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're going to talk about the challenge of inclusive design and how we can make the infrastructure sector more accessible to a wider range of society. It's a huge challenge and not merely a problem to be solved, but a commitment to ensuring independence and dignity for all. They're not my words, but those of my guest today, Meg Ginsberg, who describes herself as an assistant project manager at South West Water, a charity founder, and a disabled mum. And as a wheelchair user who's forged a career in infrastructure, Meg knows firsthand the challenge of both improving accessibility for disabled professionals in the industry, but also the vital difference that her perspective brings to decision making. And according to Meg, while hiring diverse employees capable of adapting, upskilling and delivering is key to success in construction, the employment rate of disabled people sadly is just 53% compared to 82% of non-disabled people. Perhaps, she adds, because 1 in 5 disabled individuals is unable to travel due to lack of appropriate transport options. For example, she says a wheelchair user's commute can take up to 5 times longer than that of a non-disabled person in London. Therefore, closing the transport accessibility gap for disabled people in the UK could deliver, she reckons, economic benefits of over 70 billion a year through improved well-being and access to education and employment. It's a huge challenge, but one that Meg is taking on head-on as she's founded the Constructability charity, which she hopes will refocus attitudes and provide the tools to create a society where infrastructure is not a barrier to, but actually a facilitator of equal opportunities for all. So let's hear more. Meg, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Meg, you wrote an article recently, and I've quoted from it, highlighting the challenge facing infrastructure professionals when designing for accessibility, in which you said designers need to apply conscious efforts to understand and accommodate the diverse needs of individuals, and you say listen to real life experience and learn from the true experts in accessible design, who of course are the people who live like yourself with disability every day. So, well, you work at South West Water as an assistant project manager, but you're also, as I say, a wheelchair user and, as you put it, a disabled mum. So you've got many, many plates spinning there. So how do you describe what you could say is your perspective on the challenge of boosting accessibility in the construction and infrastructure sector?
Yeah, it's very much a challenge. It's always thought about too late. So when we're thinking about access and inclusive design, it's always thought about after the concept's already created, those initial conversations are had, potentially even the locations picked, all these details have already gone ahead. Whereas actually, if we'd stripped it back and started from that right definition phase, in all honesty, there probably would be a very small additional cost to then when you're, forgotten about it and having to retrofit at the end.
So rather than just gluing it on at the end, rather than just trying to make something better.
And then it's not accessible half the time because you've got doors that lead onto other doors or slopes that don't work, and it's not a smooth design process. So I think we need to, potentially even have it as a general tick box first. At least it gets people thinking, gets people, that core team in the room, lots of different thoughts and specialties coming together and saying, okay, how can we make this accessible for everyone? What are our challenges, which there will be, and cost will a lot of the time come down to it, but how can we overcome that and think creatively and come up with solutions for everyone?
Right. And that, I suppose, in essence, is what Constructability, the charity you've just set up, is all about. Because you say it's going to help to challenge the preconceptions of what disabled people can do in construction by making construction accessible through education, innovation and collaboration. Before we get into a bit more about what the charity will do, give me the backstory. You've got a lot on.
Yes.
What led you to taking on setting up a new charity?
Yeah, I think it was through just personal need, to be honest. I've always just said, I want to do my job. I just want to sit at my desk. I don't want to have any barriers. I don't want special treatment or anything. I just want to be able to be like everyone else in many ways. And becoming disabled at 18 through many, many curveballs, becoming, as a teenage mum as well. I got pregnant at 17. And then having a 6-month-old baby, becoming disabled. My whole life flipped around. But again, I was holding on to this career of, I just want to do my job. It's a stable point and it's something that I can really focus on. it then got to the point where I go, well, actually, I can't get on site, or actually, we don't have a wheelchair accessible space at work in the parking. So how can we fix this? As these conversations start, people go, oh, I never thought about that. Or for me, it was such a basic, because I'm sort of thrust into this chair and you're looking at the world from a different perspective. And it's just, it's a basic amenity or facilities that you're requiring. It's not some luxurious lift that's got lots of LED lights or something. You just want to be able to literally get around. So I think through general conversation, people started to go, oh, actually, I hadn't thought about that. Could we do this? And people were really supportive. And then you start to realise that you're not the only one who needs this help. Yeah. And I looked around and, speaking with other individuals who are disabled through work, rare as we are in many ways, you find someone, you speak to them and go, oh, I've had that same challenge. So constructability really is to put people's voices together, because when it's your one voice going, I need this, a lot of the time that is so energy draining and emotional just for that one person to advocate for themselves. So constructability aims to sort of take that duty away and ensure that, you have exactly what you need. You have the support, safety, and you have a pool of people who know exactly what you're feeling.
I mean, obviously you're now in a position where you have got a really good perspective on what the needs are. But the charity, there's two sides to it. One is to bring more disabled people into the industry, to provide that perspective. I suppose the other one is to make sure that what the industry is delivering is actually really suitable for the users that it's aimed at. So how does constructability make that bridge that gap between those two ambitions?
Yeah, I mean, even with the first one, I probably would split it down even further. So obviously you have the first of encouraging disabled people into the industry. That's number one. We need to get people into these doors and change their perspectives on what they think is possible. But we also need to make sure that all our employees that are currently in the industry, anyone could become disabled at any time. You don't know if that's going to happen to you, whether that's a temporary illness or even if you just break your foot. That's time off work, that's money, all of this sort of stuff. So the number one is encouraging people in. Number two is keeping everyone in their role or adapting their role if they do become disabled. And number three, I always sort of add, is the ageing workforce and keeping them safe as their access needs change. Because you can't expect someone to be lifting the same material or doing the same job after 20 years, etc. So I would break the first section down into smaller parts. The other part, in terms of the teaching and talking about inclusive design, very much is about people having that practical experience, I guess, even if it's just a really small, get them in a chair, ask them to go open the door. It's about changing their thought process. But all of that together, how do we make construction accessible? It's about getting individuals, hearing their stories, promoting that, going, right, yet hear your problems, your challenges. What are you saying as a company you can't do to enable this person to work? Yet sit down together, yet be creative. If you can't get on site, can you get a drone survey? Can you get someone up there? Can you train the disabled individual to do their own drone surveys so they're independent and, they have these skills that they're bringing to the company?
Right, yeah.
And then, no different to anyone else. So it's going to very much be a learning process for the employees and the employees, both together.
Well, I'm going to drill a little bit more into the challenge and the charity and its objectives in a moment. But before we go a bit further, it'd be good to find out a bit more about you, because I think it does provide that context for what you're doing there. I mean, your day job, you've just been named Water Apprentice of the Year and the Helen Hawkins Apprentice of the Year at the Energy and Utility Skills 2024 awards. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You are, as I say, a wheelchair user, having had, what could only be described as kind of a life-changing event, which had some surgery on your feet 4 years ago, which left you unable to walk, well, certainly not comfortably able to walk, and also, a mother to your young daughter, Olive. So how do you describe your current day job and your work-life balance?
So my current day job, I'm an assistant project manager on the infrastructure team. So I currently manage all of our developer services projects. So that's, brand new developers connecting in. I'll build their sewage treatment works or pump stations. So basically always dealing in wastewater. I guess day to day, how does that look? It changes. It's dynamic. That's why I love project management. I could be in the office. I could be on site. I could be doing a training course because I started as an apprentice. So it has a lot of flexibility. My home-life balance, I guess, is a bit of a challenge. Right? So I think after becoming disabled, and having to change my career aspirations, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Project management was something that, people around me said I might be quite good at. My dad sort of said, I was quite academically strong at school, so we don't want to lose that. So where can you channel that? So I did my level 4 apprenticeship, and I loved that. And I felt challenged. I felt, this was my path to get to where I wanted to go. And while Olive was very, very small at the time, and I was still having operations, it had that stability side, which I mentioned quite a lot because, not knowing what your mobility is going to be like, day to day or even next year with further ops, it's quite hard to plan and see myself in a few years. So I tried to strip it, but I guess I do quite a lot in many ways. I love it that I do struggle to say no. I see every opportunity as like sort of a gift in many ways.
Yeah. But I suppose, but having originally set out and thinking you were going to go into Exeter University to pursue a nursing degree, you then changed pretty much overnight to join the infrastructure sector. I mean, that is quite a major sort of turnaround and something to get your head around, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's, I'd always worked to go into medicine. I'd done 7 years volunteering with St John Ambulance. I worked my way up there, and it was, I guess everyone knew that was what I was going to be doing, and have to pull out and change was different, and going into engineering, into a male-dominated field, all of that sort of stuff was, I guess, unexpected. Yeah. But it's been brilliant. Yeah,
no, medicine's loss and infrastructure's gain, I suppose. You're a working mum, as you said, and I saw a post recently where you were looking back to your life pushing a stroller, and you said, as you said just now, anyone can become disabled at any time. You found it out at 18, 6 months after giving birth to your daughter. I mean, how do you cope? Or how have you coped with that change in life and career? What keeps you incredibly positive? Because you are incredibly positive, and you've got so many plates spinning.
I haven't always been strong, and it has. It is difficult day to day. I guess value what I've got now. I see a lot of worth and support that potentially I didn't realise I had before. Very, very strong family connections, and very, very grateful for that. But I guess I distract myself a lot of time with work, just to keep moving forward, to have any progress. If my feet can't be fixed, what can I be doing to, better myself in other ways? So I do sport. I try and, mix it up. I try new things. So I go to the gym, I swim. I'm about to do an adaptive CrossFit competition, which who knew was a thing, but all of these brilliant
who knew was
things.
A thing, yes.
Exactly. But it's I guess finding the enjoyment and the opportunities that are still there.
Well, you're based in Sidmouth on the glorious Jurassic coastline in Devon, and I believe you're about to do the Bath and Bristol Railway Marathon on the 20th of October, raising money for the ICE Benevolent Fund. Some challenge, I suppose. Firstly, how's the training going? And secondly, how does it work? You're doing it with your friend who's running, and you're in the wheelchair.
Yes. So Alex and I are both future leaders for the IC for the Southwest. So we only met last year, and he's been so supportive, and we get along very, very well. So he's been the best sort of training partner. He's been there for literally every push. But I use my day chair. Training's been going well. I guess in many ways, we keep going. We did break a wheel a few weeks back at one of the park runs, but that's luckily we've got a new one now. But
right.
It's new. It's one of those things. I'm very unprepared, and naivety at this point is getting me through. However, I know on the day, with Dory going, just keep swimming. It will just be just keep pushing. Yeah. It's that muscle memory.
Yeah. So Alex runs with you, does he? He didn't just leg it off and leave you behind?
No, well, he has done in a few training runs. But no, so yeah, he'll run with me. We very much so, if there's any camber, he'll try and support and slightly push on one side. If there is any hill as well, he'll just make sure we keep the momentum going.
Right, yeah.
And then try and keep up while I go down the other side.
No. I'll put a link in the show notes so that people can find out a bit more about what you're up to, and probably, I'm sure you're seeking sponsorship, aren't you? So let's talk a bit more about what you're up to with constructability, though. I mean, you've got 3 goals for the charity. Let's drill into those, I suppose, starting with the need to increase the number of disabled people within the construction industry. I mean, what does success look like to you, I suppose, numbers-wise?
Numbers-wise, it's difficult because, if one person said to me, I've gone into construction because of you, I mean, what an amazing thing to be able to say. You've changed someone's life and given them sort of this whole new prospect of career and ambition and everything like that. So I guess it's not about 500,000 people coming in. Obviously we want it to be an industry change. We have to have that size and, impact. However, I don't want to be looking at people as figures on spreadsheets. It's
about individuals.
Exactly. And it's more about people being able to come in knowing that there are others around that can support them. And if they've got the challenges like going through access to work or, what do I do on site because they're saying I can't do this. And even just knowing your own legal rights and having that mental sort of strength, they actually know you're wrong. If we can fuel people with that and get them in, that that's all I could ask for.
Yeah, which touches on the second goal, which is to educate employers and employees on the support that's available, and that includes what their legal rights and requirements are. How do you do that? Is that about setting up training courses? Is that about people going into support? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so the work that we're going to be doing, so very much when I talk about an educational piece, I aim to have like an annual conference every year coming together. So I guess that's more of a industry-wide, getting everyone in one room, getting down the facts and sort of saying, you got to come on board because we have to have this change now. When we're looking at individuals, so when we start to sort of open for donations and support, very much it's going to be, if your company signs up to be a supporter, we want to be able to train you guys and, you have to be able to align with our values and know why we're doing this and really sort of work towards our aim. So then, yes, we would provide that training. We'd have, whether it's a Teams or in person, really getting to speak to companies, individuals, and we could do mentoring. It's one of those, starting a charity from scratch is such just an incredible opportunity because we're completely, open to do whatever's needed. Which is exciting.
Well, I suppose in many ways it's kind of there are many things you need to do. You're in a sweet shop of opportunity, but I suppose eventually you need to focus that down and work out what it is that's important. I suppose the final thing you talk about is the need to innovate and to create change and adaptations that will allow individuals to work safely. In practice, what does that mean? Who will you be trying to influence in that case?
Yeah, so what does that look like? So, for example, adaptive PPE, a very sort of, basic need and safety feature that we have to have. But, we want to be looking at how can we actually design clothes that keep people safe, keep them comfortable, but also ensure that if they've got a stoma bag, they can empty that safely. And, it's that, stripping everything back, making sure though that we're conscious about other factors. So when we look back, for example, accessible parking on site, I'm not expecting people to go put a massive concrete slab because, number one, is that the right thing for the project? Is that the right thing for the environment? And is that actually going to give, provide the service that we need? Whereas could we do, find some matting or other, other materials, recycle materials, or reuse things that can actually, fulfill that purpose?
Yeah.
So I think it's just thinking a bit outside the box and hopefully by then, sort of overcoming some challenges.
Yeah. Well, presumably, given that 5 years ago you weren't a wheelchair user, it's been something of a surprise that so much needs to be done.
Yeah, it really has been. And even for my parents as well, they had a grown-up daughter, my teenage pregnancy was, I guess, a bit of a shock in the first place. And, they were incredible through that. But then realising that actually, I can't get from the car into the GP surgery because someone's parked across the curb. I think a lot of it is attitudes. A lot of it is basic facilities that you'd expect to have, and actually those challenges. So, for example, if you have a slight camber and it's wet, how much of an impact that physically has on the person pushing their chair, or other perspectives as well. If someone's not in a wheelchair, there's such a range of disability. They're using sticks or a powered one. It's how they're living their lives as well and seeing the world.
You're just about to appoint 5 new trustees, having been through a shortlisting process. You're announcing these in the next week or so. Any clues? What sort of folk have you selected?
So, well, they're all incredible. I never set out, obviously, targeting anyone individually. There are a few people that have inspired me and have supported me along the way. So very much trying to sort of poke them, do you want to apply and, come into this to support me? But they're all disabled individuals, which is actually incredible because I didn't think we'd be able to do that. Each of them have their own challenges. Each of them have their own motivation and goals. And I think that's so powerful to bring those all together and align that to the charity. They all work in different areas of construction. So we've got people who work in, national charities doing active travel. We've got people who work on the environmental side. We've got civil engineers. I guess I tried to create a broad spectrum of the construction industry in itself so that we make sure we cover all areas. But they're all just amazing, and I think they really will drive the charity to progress and grow.
Well, you're now recruiting for committee roles, which will split into different sectors. So how do you see the charity being funded?
So funding's an interesting one. I see the charity being funded very much in a sort of, it's not a membership, but it's a supporter sort of donation per year. I guess you'd look at it like that. So you'd say if South West Water were coming on board, the work we're doing, we have to have money for, simple. So we would suggest a potential donation of this, obviously depending on employer size and stuff like that. If you'd be happy to do that, this is the work we're going to be doing. And we'll make sure that obviously South West Water particularly highlighted for the work that they're doing in positive aspects, but we then help with the sort of more challenges. So I guess that's the way we're going to go. Obviously, then through sponsorship, through events, just the normal routes. I'd love to get some grant funding if we can. I know the National Lottery have got an amazing sort of resource pool there as well. Once we get a bit more organised and I guess set up to try and apply for something like that as well. And it's one of those, we could do this without money, just through volunteers.
Yeah.
But actually, if we're looking at an industry change, which the scale has to be that big, actually, we are going to have some funding.
Yeah. Well, the charity's got a number of focus areas, which I presume will help that funding focus. The first of those is working on to promote adaptive PPE. That's personal protective equipment. What are the specific challenges that you've identified that need to be tackled?
So it's very much individual based with the sort of PPE, because obviously we've only really just got female, PPE that's fitted to our bodies and that's actually made to keep us comfy and safe while out and about. So it's going to take a while to be able to grow, I guess, more of a catalogue style where you can go, I'm a wheelchair user, flip, let's order this one. I don't really see that happening.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see if that's worthwhile having something like that. I think potentially if we're able to tailor it to each individual, that's going to be the best. So if someone, for example, has lost a limb, how can we add different poppers? Can we do zips? Can we, reduce the size of the materials, stuff like this? Or I guess it completely depends on the individual. If someone doesn't have dexterity in their hands, can we use magnets? Can we think a bit more outside the box so they're independently able to stay safe and put on their own equipment?
I suppose what you're trying to do is make sure that the PPE is available that suits the needs of those particular users. If you're going to encourage more people who are disabled into the industry, you then need to provide that equipment for them. Which I suppose comes to the next area, which is providing support for people applying to the UK Access to Work scheme, government grants for equipment, communication support. Because as you wrote recently, it's expensive. Your off-road capable wheelchair can cost nearly $15,000, which is certainly more than my car's worth. And it's a huge amount for someone starting out on a career. How will the charity support them? Will it be around providing the information, or will there be grants available as well?
So Access to Work is a brilliant funding pot. It really is a good service. It helps a lot of people. However, it takes probably about 6 months just to speak to someone. Once you get that contact, it's quite quick then ordering equipment, but you have to know what you want and you really have to advocate for it. So again, it's that if you're coming into a new industry, what do I need? What are the expectations? What's out there? So information is going to be a really key part. Access Work is also a bit tricky in the sense you pay for however many days out of 7 that you work. So I work 5 days out of 7. So if I'm using this equipment, so if I'm using my wheelchair at the weekends, I pay 2/7 because that's the worth that I guess work's not covering. That 2/7 of my 20k funding that I got was a lot of money, and very much that can provide barriers to individuals in itself. So yes, definitely I see there being a grant pot. I see there being, support available for individuals to bridge that gap. I also see us being able to have, hopefully in the future, sort of our own temporary equipment. So if you're waiting for your chair, or if you're waiting for a type of crutch, can we provide that just to keep you going? I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the last of your focus areas, which is around the importance of inclusive design. I mean, and you think, well, surely by now that's an area which, if you're a designer, it's risen to the top of mind over the last few decades. I mean, hasn't it? I mean, what's still missing? Why do you think it is? There are still areas that are missing.
So you would think that. However, I guess when you're living it, you see the cracks. So, for example, my best friend, she's also in a wheelchair. And I took Olive round to see her the other day. And she lives on a brand new housing estate in Exeter, literally in the centre. We're like, we've got a playground on the estate, all brand new, let's go and see it. No drop curves, no accessible matting or ground surface that I could actually push Olive. So you've got this poor 4-year-old sat on a swing going, "Mummy, come push me." Sorry, I can't push you. I can't get there. It's not accessible, and it's just not, it's not right. And these are things, again, that I thought about so last minute, and that playground's just being chucked in. It's a tick box. But it's not.
Yeah. Well, you wrote also about tactile paving being fantastic for visually impaired, but not necessarily ideal for wheelchair users.
Yeah, and that's why I say we're never going to be fully accessible, and inclusive in that sense, because people do have different needs. So, if you're autistic and you struggle with noises and flashing lights, if you're crossing a road, number one, that could be a massive challenge. You've also got to remember people have different disabilities or neurodiversities, in one person. So if you're autistic and also a wheelchair user, that in itself, just crossing a road, could be a really difficult and challenging thing. For me, I have screws in my feet. So when I go over any sort of bumpy surface, that causes a lot of pain. A lot of spinal cord injury sufferers also, have that same sort of that motion sensor sort of pain. But then you also look at individuals. So I've got a friend who's got cerebral palsy, and because his feet are more sensitive than, people without a disability or without CP, any sort of surface, again, that causes pain. So you would never think about that if you're that's a safety standard that you have to follow and we should be complying with. Mm-hmm. But then it causes other people challenge it. And that's why it's quite interesting to see the different perspectives that how do you balance it up?
Yeah, which again comes back to this: the more people who have the lived experience, who are in the industry, the better. Let's just finish off with talking a bit about your ambitions for constructability. I mean, living with a disability in the construction industry is a specific issue that you talk about. It's, you say it's one thing to ensure that disabled employees can simply do their jobs, but it's another to ensure they have the opportunities to progress within that role. I mean, is infrastructure construction, is it different from other sectors? Is it doing better than other sectors or worse?
I would probably say in general it's doing worse because a lot of the time it takes a lot longer to make change, and particularly in the water industry as well, it's a very slow moving field. So I think we are far behind where we need to be. I think the particular challenges that we have with recruitment, retention, and actually being able to have the resources to cover the amount of work that's coming, we don't have the option now to say yes or no, we're not accessible, we can't make these changes. This is a critical point where we have to be changing how we think and how we view people. These people, if you support an individual, not only are you going to be growing trust and loyalty, but you're going to be, giving someone so much more than just a job. Potentially doing an apprenticeship, upskilling through education opportunities that they might not have had before. Even just that ability to see people day to day and that mental stimulation, and I guess the fact that it makes you far less lonely having that routine, and it's more than just a disabled person coming into the industry. It's what that does to their whole life, and I think we need to see that value, see the value they then bring as individuals, and upscale this now. It has to be across sectors.
Lots and lots and lots to do there, Meg.
Yes.
I mean, what's the next on your to-do list for the charity? You've got your trustees in place. You're about to find some committee leads. What's next?
What's next? So we actually have to become a charity in itself, so I have to get registered. So
right, okay.
yeah, so that's the sort of ongoing process. A lot of paperwork for me to fill in. What's next after that? Obviously we have the basics: bank account, website, just literally to get up and running. And then I think it's about, getting people supporting now. It's reaching out, getting these companies, getting South West Water, getting the other water companies, getting the oil companies, getting the gas, and really generating this movement to actually make construction accessible to all.
I mean, how are you going about convincing the industry to engage? Because I'm sure that they will want to engage, but I suppose there's a lot of always a lot of competing things for them to do. So how do you get them to engage with your charity?
Yeah, it's actually been really interesting because everyone that I've spoken to has been so desperate to get on board with this. I think a lot of the time it just wasn't thought of and it hasn't been seen. And I go to site and you get a lot of people from ops and they're like, oh, I didn't think I'd ever see someone in a wheelchair on one of my sites and stuff like that. So I don't think it's a barrier. I think it's something that people are now seeing as the future, if that makes sense. And why can't this be a thing? Yeah. So I don't think we're going to have issues in convincing people. I think we're going to have to make sure, though, that our communication targets the right people and that we word things in a way. So, for example, if you've got a company that's so money-driven and that's so focused on the pennies and the pounds, okay, so what value do disabled individuals bring to your company? What do they bring to the sector? And I guess target it to them. Yeah,
so making it a business imperative rather than just a nice thing to do. If there's someone listening to this, how do they get involved? How can they go and give you a hand with what you've got there and share the load, etc.?
Yeah, cool. So hopefully we'll have our website sort of set up before Christmas, definitely. So I guess that would be the one-stop shop. We're on LinkedIn at the moment, though, already. My LinkedIn is always open for people. I'd love to have, lots of Teams calls about people's lived experiences. But I guess it's that willingness, just reach out. And then hopefully, we'll build those bridges and, get going with this.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks so much for your time today, Meg. I mean, it's really, really inspirational talking to you. So thanks very much for joining me today and explaining what you've got going on there on the Infrastructure Podcast today. I suppose before you go, I mean, how do people support you in the marathon? You probably want people to give you some sponsorship or at least some cheering.
A bit of cheering would be brilliant. So it's on the 20th of October and it's the Bath to Bristol Railway Marathon. Money, I know times are so difficult at the moment, and that's why we specifically picked the IC Ben Fund, because they try to support people during financial hardship or bereavement, or even just, for example, getting an autism assessment. So they sort of cover quite a wide amount of things, but it's not all about money, just a nice little comment or anything like that, or, setting yourself your own challenge. What for you could be a new point or something to work towards. So, it should be good, hopefully. We'll get there.
Well, good luck with it. Good luck with the training between now and then, and I hope it all goes really well on the day. So, Meg, thanks so much for joining me on the Infrastructure Podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant.
Sadly, it's all we've got time for today, though. But we've got more in the pipeline from the Infrastructure Podcast and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background links to the issues discussed today. Plenty of ways to get in touch with Meg, but also all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share with colleagues. So thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Meg. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.